Well, basically, I just kind of break it down like I'm doing a pre-task plan or a JHA, where you have to give descriptions, and at the end of those, they just sign them. And I think a lot of contractors are getting away from those because people just like throwing their names on there.
Right.
It's almost like I challenge them to a point to respond. Now, sometimes I do ask direct questions, but it's like this morning, I said, as far as the hammer drilling, if we're installing anchors, what are the priorities and what are the hazards? What are the necessities? But yeah, it's more of a questionnaire to get them to respond, and you know that they understand what you're telling them. To be honest with you, Xavier spoke to me about some, and he told me to look at some of his other videos as far as the ratings and the grades and how you can improve yourself.
Right.
And what more or less what y'all are wanting in the videos, because I was kind of vague on some of it, I'm not gonna lie. But then I watched some of the examples, and I said, well, that's just natural instructions, you know? But if you can tell kind of right, and we see the guys before they get here, before we get on camera, and you can tell right away what kind of mood they're in. And I try to kind of bug that out before we get on camera in case I see a negative attitude or what have you. And then right away, I always say, good morning, how's everybody today? Because I want to respond right off the bat. And then I make sure they're listening. If they don't respond, they're not listening.
Amen.
And then they vaguely know what we're going to do the next day because we discussed it prior. Today did kind of change a little bit. And but they fell right into exactly what was going to happen. And I guess, yeah, it's basically kind of talking to them like they don't have a clue what you're talking about. But the more I'm vague about it is to get more response, because I can see it in their eyes. And y'all can't see me on the camera and talking, but I can see in their eyes if they're understanding or not. If they're not understanding, I throw a question. And I think I was basically, at first, I was just talking, I was just giving instructions, and that was it.
Right.
And then I realized I needed more. After I start watching the other videos, I needed more interaction from them. And that's when I started asking questions. And because if you don't get that clarity, you can tell them what to do, and 10 minutes later, they're saying, hey, what am I doing here? And so, well, we just talked about it in a meeting a minute ago. Y'all know what you're doing. But that's where I get the more questions that I asked. And like I said, yes, at first was awkward. I was just talking. I was just giving instructions. Y'all understand? Yeah, okay, listen.
Right.
And then I broke it down further to where I get more interaction from them. And I think I said this earlier, that if you're getting interaction from them, they're understanding better. If you're not asking questions, they're not listening. It's just another safety meeting and they blow it off and leave. And sometimes if the projects are easy, I feel bad when I'm done because I didn't ask enough questions, but in my mind, it wasn't a hardcore issue. Right. It was simplified to a point. But like when we were handling the heat exchangers and stuff, those were major issues, and we had to go through the details of that. And those are high hazards involved. And I ask them, what's a high hazard in this scenario? And I make them respond. But by them responding, they know. They know. No, I'm not seeing any conflict at all. Basically, when we're at the boxes in the morning and everybody's getting ready, I said, all right, let's knock this video out, and it's boom, boom. Everybody's just heads up and ready to go. But that's part of that. I mean, that's also keeping that mentality with the guys all day. Not just first, but you're on a good conversation. I mean, we have cell phone numbers during the day. We call each other if there's issues, because I can't be there all the time, and the crew's going to grow, and we know that. But no, I don't see any negative comment from the guys, and they're getting better at answering it. Because I've had a couple of times I ask a question, and that's the answer I get. I said, well, tell me why, or tell me how. To get them talking, because if they just do that, I don't know that they really understood. Yes, sir. I'm going to say 100%. One of them in particular, which is the one that English is not his natural language, but I want to see him as a foreman. I'm basically, and he knows this, he's kind of my lead man at this point. But that's where I need the English. That's where we can talk on the phone. If he's up on L3 and I'm in the parking garage, I can call him, hey, what about this? Yes, 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 and he answers. And But they totally understand what we're doing with this. It's not an issue. And I think they know also that they're not just taking a pre-task plan and signing it and passing it to the next guy. Because that's basically all those really are, is piece of papers with signatures. And they're a little more, I think, accountable now because they're on a video and everybody sees and they know that they've been instructed and they know the answers, especially like with the face shields. And if we're doing hammer drills, I'll tell them what's requirement. Oh, yeah, we have to have face shield. So if he catches them without a face shield, he can go back to this and say, hey, we talked about it in the meeting this morning.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say it again. Number one, I always start out with good morning. How are y'all? It's Monday morning. Did y'all have a great weekend? And that creates a casual atmosphere, in my opinion. And you want a casual atmosphere. You don't want a safety meeting to sound like you're harping on something. And there again, I do ask a lot of the questions, and they know the answers to them, to a point. But if you're reminding them on a daily basis, they remember. And that's where I really, so that you're clear in your questions so that they can give direct answers. And if they don't give the answer you want, you ask again. And if you ask 2 or 3 times, you're gonna get the answer they want, and you say exactly. I asked Kuba a question today, and he went off from it. I said, yes, sir, exactly, you're right. So you acknowledge when they're right.
Yeah.
And I do that on the camera or on the microphone, they don't see me. But give an acknowledgement, they appreciate that. And I think that's what makes these more comfortable for the guys, is because they see the appreciation as what I'm doing. I'll be honest with you. I got some very positive comments from this man right here, as well as Enrique. as well as Enrique, both of them. And that's when I think he was telling me something a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, what? But basically, he was like, you're doing very well, and that's not something we normally hear. You know, all we ever hear is you're losing money, you're behind, hurry up, whatever. But it feels nice on these hot, cold, whatever construction jobs to hear something positive every once in a while. Well, it depends on the scenario, and I'm going to fall back again on unloading the heat exchangers and staging the heat exchangers, because there are a lot of hazards in that. And I went pretty detailed into the procedure. And I may not ask a lot of questions sometimes because I'm going to be detailed on what we are going to do. Because that parking garage is a high hazard all the time because it's active. And there's not only people in there, but there's personal cars in there. And I learned real quick, and I talked about this last week, I think, if you're flagging, the pedestrians and automobiles have the right of way. You tell me to stop, because I do the operating also. You tell me to stop. They go first, and then I go. And that incorporates big time into their job. In fact, I saw for a fact Douglas was flagging me Monday, and I'm going to refer to 6th Street, but that's where the big loading area is here. And he knew to stand at that corner of that fence and watch for any pedestrian, because there's a pedestrian walkway right outside the DPR fence, and then there's 6th Street. I said, because I'm not coming out of that corner unless it's all clear. And he stood there and he watched and he flagged me the whole time in his head doing this. But he snapped to what we said during this meeting. So that did go into, but we also get into these 6-inch joints of pipe we have are 400 pounds apiece. And you don't just pick them up by yourself. We go through lifting procedures. And there's times where I've made them do a lifting procedure. Show me how to lift properly. Because that's what I expect to see when I'm out there. I don't want to take a guy to a pro man or whatever because he pulled his back because he bent over trying to pick up something heavy.
So
the hardest thing for me to do is speaking in public. And I don't like speaking in public. And it goes back when I was in high school and when I was in college. I do not like speaking in public. Maybe it's easier because y'all are on a computer screen right here. I don't know.
You could have never.
But I think I felt more comfortable when the camera's not staring at me or I could talk.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess really the hardest part was learning how to incorporate it because Because it's easy to go sit down the night before and fill out a JHA and come the next morning and have them sign it, because that's easy. But I'll be honest with you, when the guys are unlocking the boxes and getting their tools out, I'm brainstorming in my mind. I prepare what I'm going to talk about before I go in. I have to, because if I just flip it on, I'm going to look ignorant standing there not knowing what to say. So I prep myself before this, and I think anybody new would have to learn to do that also. I think the biggest thing that I fall back on is its justification, because if the guys say it, they know. If they sign a piece of paper, they don't. And the deeper you break off in a conversation, the more questions that you ask, the more responses that you get, those guys are ready to go. And it prepares them mentally, much more so than listening to someone read something, sign a piece. I mean, I've been to those safety meetings where everybody's standing around looking while the guy's reading. Oh yeah, I got to sign that and I'm out. I mean, that's a benefit when you have everybody talking. If he's someone that I knew, I would tell him right up, take some pride in what he does. Like ask him, do you take pride in your work? And you say, yes, well, take pride in this. Because you understand, safety is one of TDI's #1 course. And as a TDI supervisor, we have to understand that, and we have to carry safety as pride. You have to show a way to take pride in what you're doing, and that'll make them, it'll make them accountable and make them want to work harder. Because you're not proud of just going, we're good. There's no pride in that. I think a lot of it's pride, though, and you have to have pride. And I don't mean pride and arrogance. You got to be proud of what you do. Right. There's days that I go home, and I try not to talk about work at home. I try not to. But my wife can tell when I get home. And she'll say, bad day. I don't want to talk about it. Because I don't. Because I wasn't proud. It wasn't that it was necessarily a bad day, but there may have been one thing that happened on that project that I wasn't proud of that day. You got to go home happy every day. And the only way you're going to be happy is to be proud of what you did all day.